Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Spread. I am your host, Mark Henry Jr. You can follow me on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. That's my dog, Becky, chiming in. We're doing a little solo edition. The wife's out of the house. My normal podcast studio is an absolute Christmas pandemonium over there. So you get a nice view of the apartment here with the Christmas tree in the background. It's Christmas season, but more than anything, it's CFP season. It's college football playoff season. You go on Twitter, maybe it's just my algorithm, but you go on Twitter, nobody wants to talk about anything but college football. So we're going to talk a little bit about a lot of that today here. You can follow me on Twitter, by the way, at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Go follow Eagles Pinpool at Eagles Pinpool. Follow Shane Half at Shane Half NFL, and go subscribe to the Eagles Pinpool YouTube. Only have one college football Saturday play today. I'm branching my wings out and flying a little bit on the hardwood with college basketball. Have a couple teams I've kind of staked some odds in early on in the year, and have some kind of takes that will probably take me, as far as until they let me down completely. So a couple teams that I have my eyes on, and a lot of them play today. So good college basketball slate. And let's get started there. I have my NFL picks for tomorrow. I believe I have 4 on the 1 o'clock slate, a teaser on the late afternoon, and then some Monday plays. But let's get started in college football in conference championship Saturday. The way that the conference championship police want to protect the importance of this day while also not punishing the loser has never made sense to me. If you want to act like this day is important just because of banners and flags, all right, man. I guess I look at things a little bit too cut and dry, a little bit too black and white, because when you move from a 2-team championship to a 4-team playoff to a 12-team playoff, that invariably is going to change the expectations, hopes, and dreams of a good bit of schools, even the schools that pop up and surprise us throughout the year and make us think they have a chance and don't end up having a chance. The 12-team playoff is what the sport is about now. Everything that happens outside of it, once that's over, once the committee decides who the 12 teams in the playoff are on Sunday or on tomorrow at noon, I don't have a whole lot of interest in discussing the other 100 and whatever it is. And that still goes even if Notre Dame isn't in. And I think that there's a chance based on a game today that Notre Dame isn't in. But conference championship Saturday, we can't act like it is what it was. It just isn't. When you increase the amount of the playoff, the conference championships mean less. And I get that they tried to mitigate that by the teams getting in with auto bids. And most of the time, those teams are going to get in anyway. But certainly some anomalies this year, and we'll see how things go. I think this is the last time we'll be seeing an 11 and 12 seed like Virginia, like Tulane, like James Madison. I think they will probably keep a spot, but I think there will be some guardrails put where if you're a conference champion that does not meet those expectations, or if the 5th conference champion is not ranked or top 20 or whatever that is, that you go to the number 11 team or the number 10 team or the number 12 team or wherever that cut line is. It's going to be one of Notre Dame, BYU, or Miami this year. So real quick, nobody wants to hear me talk about it. And honestly, I don't want to talk about it too much because, in my opinion, it's over. The committee decided Notre Dame for 6 straight weeks has been put over Miami. Notre Dame and Miami don't play this week. Why do people think that 2 teams that don't play this week, when one is 10 and one is 12, if the number 11 team moves, that makes the number 12 team better than the number 10 team? I think Hunter Yurachek did not want to take all of the intrigue away from the playoff reveal on Sunday, which is a big deal for ESPN. If you look at his comments when he wasn't on ESPN, it's a little bit more favorable to Notre Dame, especially his comments to Mike Golick, the radio host. And for whatever, I think it's a joke that people, and I don't think this would be happening if it was other schools besides Notre Dame. I think there's obviously a hatred towards them, rightfully or not rightfully. But It's ridiculous that we're even just acting like head-to-head's the only metric when Notre Dame's won 10 straight games by double digits, and Miami's in a conference where 7-5 Duke is playing in the conference title game because they couldn't get it done and they couldn't win the tiebreakers against 7-5 Duke. So I don't really have a lot of sympathy for the argument. But even if you want to say, hey, Mark, Miami should be ranked above Notre Dame, that's fine. If you think that and you disagree with me, you're absolutely entitled to that opinion. You cannot tell me that it is better process and better precedent to set going forward that the committee can change how they feel about idle teams in the last week of the season and bump one above the other because of noise from the outside. Whether you agree with that noise or disagree with that noise, the noise might come for you at some time too. I think it's incredibly foolish and incredibly stupid to suggest that two teams that aren't playing this weekend are going to change dramatically in the ranking. And I understand that he said idle teams can move up and move down. They did last year. If you go look at that, they only moved up based on the winners and losers of the conference championship Saturday. And another part of that quote is if you go look at Hunter Yurachek's quote, he also said idle teams can move up or down depending on their strength of record and strength of schedule improving on conference championship Saturday. Guess who played nobody that's in a conference championship? Miami. Guess who played Boise State, who blew out UNLV in the Mountain West Championship last night? Notre Dame. Notre Dame's strength metrics are going to improve, even if it's slightly, based on that. And Hunter Yurachek opened the door for that, and the team is already ahead of Miami. And I understand that the odds are slightening. Notre Dame's still minus 355 to get into the playoff. It's basically pretty inverse to what Texas Tech's money line is today. And then one more thing, and Hunter Yurachek referenced this on the Golick Show. Notre Dame and Miami were both 6-2 when the college football playoff rankings started. Notre Dame was 10th, Miami was 18th. What am I supposed to believe has happened in the 4 games since that should switch anything that dramatically? Notre Dame beat Syracuse 70-7 by like 30 more points. We both beat up on Pitt. Miami failed to cover against Virginia Tech. In addition, Notre Dame beat Navy, who was ranked at the time, 49-10, and beat Stanford 49-20. And everybody wants to talk about Notre Dame bias. We dropped a spot behind Alabama beating Auburn by 7 when we won by 29. And I think Stanford sucks. I think Alabama should have been ahead of us beforehand. So I actually don't have too much of a problem with Alabama being in regardless of SEC Championship Saturday. They beat Georgia and Vanderbilt. Their loss to Oklahoma, they outgained them by 250 yards. Not all losses are built the same. Miami lost to Louisville and SMU. Alabama lost to Oklahoma in a miraculous way where they had a billion turnovers and outgained them by a billion yards and outplayed them in every metric, but shot themselves in the foot and lost by a field goal. Notre Dame lost to Texas A&M by 1 point on a botched extra point hold, and then a missed call on a hold on the biggest play of the game on a game-winning touchdown for Texas A&M. You cannot tell me that all losses are built the same. I'm even BYU, which, by the way, it's not even worth talking about it because you have a playoff game, BYU. You are lucky enough to have the chance to play your way in to the college football playoff. There are plenty of teams that wish they had that opportunity. And if you lose to the same team that's the best team on your schedule who beat you by 22, and really it was worse than that, you scored at the end, then I'm sorry, you don't belong in the dance. That's just as simple as it is. And if they win, I'm screwed, and I accept that. If Notre Dame is out because BYU wins, I'm going to be sad because I think this is one of the best Notre Dame teams of my lifetime, and it's just unfortunate that they lost 2 games by 4 points in the first 2 games of the year. But I think what we've seen from these last 10 games, I think this is the best Notre Dame offense of my lifetime, and I think the defense has really improved down the stretch. I think with the way C.J. Carr plays quarterback, with the way that Jeremiah Love plays running back, Jadarian Price backs him up, the receivers have taken a huge step. I think this Notre Dame team can beat just about anybody in the country. But if BYU wins, they didn't earn their way in, and they don't belong in the college football playoff. It's that simple. If BYU loses, There should be no debate. There should be no argument. Notre Dame was above BYU in Miami last week. Nothing should change. BYU lost. Miami didn't play. Notre Dame didn't play. That should end. There should be no trauma going into Sunday. And I suspect that the national media and maybe even some odds shifting based on money coming in will shift towards Miami a little bit more. I still think Notre Dame will be far more favored than Miami in that scenario to make the playoffs on the gambling markets. But I think it's just to build intrigue. And I think this is the ESPN machine doing what the ESPN machine does. And everybody out there that's saying, you know, the ACC, let's say Duke wins the ACC championship today and the ACC champion is out of the college football playoff. Everybody out there is saying, well, they're going to want to put an ACC team in. They're going to want to placate the ACC. They're in those CFP meetings with all the conferences. Guess who else is in those CFP meetings with all the conferences? The Notre Dame Fighting Irish athletic director, Pete Bavacqua, who I thought did a phenomenal job on Pat McAfee yesterday. But anyway, conference championships are dead. I have no interest in Ohio State, Indiana. That might be controversial. I'm sorry to people out there. It's 1 versus 2. They're both getting a bye. There's no stakes to it. I'm sorry to say it. The game with the most stakes is by far the Big 12 championship, because you have Texas Tech. You win, you get a bye. You lose, you don't. You might even have a 7 seed, and you might have to play a Notre Dame team, a Miami team, Alabama team if they lose. Like, you might be in some serious trouble instead of winning and getting yourself a bye. And yeah, I think that it is imperative for Texas Tech to win that game. But you can't match motivation with a playoff game for BYU. This is a play-in game. Win and you're in, lose and you're going home for the Mormons. Kalani Sitake just faked leaving for Penn State and then did the I'm not effing leaving. I think that's a little scary for me as a Notre Dame fan who's guns up rooting for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And even though I'm guns up rooting for the Texas Tech Red Raiders, money's green, I'm betting on the Mormons. I'm betting BYU. I got them at plus 13 yesterday. I'm not confident in it. It's only a 1-unit play. But I'm going with BYU. Looking at the rest of the college football slate, Miami of Ohio goes to Western Michigan. I don't have any read on this game, really. The total's set right where it should be if you look at the numbers. I like Miami of Ohio if you made me pick. They beat them earlier in the year. It was in Miami of Ohio, but that would be where I would lean. Georgia-Bama at 4 o'clock. I am rooting for Georgia. Just maybe that would give buffer. Maybe it would move Bama below Notre Dame. Maybe, I think there's a lot of reasons why that you should probably root for Georgia if you're a Notre Dame fan, even though I don't think it should ultimately impact getting in that much. Bama should be in no matter what. But just like I said, for the motivation for BYU Texas Tech, you wonder if that motivation leans towards Alabama. Bama has owned Kirby Smart, but this is a good chance for Kirby Smart in Atlanta to try to flip that narrative. At 8 o'clock, I just said Indiana, Ohio State. I don't have a read on this game. I don't think this game matters nearly as much as people would like you to believe that work at television networks. But give me Ohio State with the points if I had to make a pick. I think there's a chance Indiana, if they get down early, kind of turtles up a little bit. Duke, Virginia, throwing my hands up. I have no idea, brother. This is a crazy, crazy ACC championship, one of the worst championships I can ever remember. They scored 51 points in their last game. The total is 57.5. If you maybe make a play, I would lean under that 57.5. Maybe you go Virginia team total under. Their team total is set at, I don't think so. 30.5. If it was 32.5, maybe I'd take a look at that. But no read on any of these college football games. All I have is BYU. And one more thing, because I'm in a college football group chat with some buddies, and I just wanted to talk. We were talking about our top 5 coaches, which led to talk about our top 10 coaches. If I was hiring at a blue blood, let's say I was being interviewed at an athletic director at a blue blood school in college football, these are the 10 names I would go down the list. Even if I knew I couldn't get them, these were the names I would list off. There's a champions tier, obviously, Kirby Smart and Ryan Day, the only active champions. They're 1 and 2. Next up, Marcus Freeman and Dan Lanning. I think they are 1 and 2 of the best coaches that haven't won a championship that I would want my team to hire if I was looking. The last of the elite, I'd say Lane Kiffin. Say all you want, but he's 50-14 in his last 5 years at Ole Miss. Curt Cignetti, Google him. Kalen DeBoer, I'm still keeping him up here. He's 19-5 at Bama, but it's really the work he did with Penix at Washington that puts him up this high for me. And then Mike Elko, I think he's kind of comfortably behind that top 7, but he's also comfortably ahead of the next 2 names I'm going to give. The next 2 guys who round out my top 10, who I think this is way up for debate. I went with Eli Drinkwitz, who I know this is probably a very unpopular pick for that. Drink's 29-9 over the last 3 years at Missouri, which I think is an incredible accomplishment. His predecessor, Barry Odom, was 25-25 pre-Drinkwitz. What he's built has been so impressive. I think Florida and Penn State and Auburn, if you want to include them, if that's a big enough job, all missed out big on hiring Drink. I think that was the perfect hire, especially Florida. I've weirdly liked the lower level hires more than the high level hires. I think Oklahoma State got a great hire in Eric Morris. I think Kentucky got a great hire in Will Stein. I think USF got a great hire in Brian Hartline. I think obviously Ole Miss and LSU, I think both did the right things. That's another conversation. I'm missing I think Michigan State did a good job with Pat Fitzgerald. I think there's plenty of lower level or mid level teams that did a great job with their searches. Matt Campbell's always been a big fat meh for me personally. John Sumrall, Alex Golish, Ryan Silverfield, all these G5 guys going to the SEC. I think it's a little bit too much too soon for some of those guys. And Sumrall's the guy who I could buy in on. I think he's got the personality to buy in on. I could get why he got in a room and sold them, but I would take Drink over any of those guys comfortably. And then my last guy rounding out the top 10 is Sark. I kind of wanted to say Whittingham or Dillingham, honestly, but Kyle's probably a little too old. Dillingham probably needs one more year of playoff competing to be put in that conversation, even though this year wasn't his fault with injuries. With the success Sark has had, it's hard to not put him on this list, but my heart doesn't truly believe it. I just couldn't find that 10th guy that I could really make the cohesive argument for over Sark. So that rounds out my college football portion of the show, and let's finish it up with actually real quick before we get to the NFL. College basketball Saturday heating up. I like the Dukies -1.5 at Michigan State at 12 o'clock. That's probably my second favorite play of the day. I like Indiana +5.5 against Louisville at home. It's not at home, actually. It's in Indianapolis. I think it'll probably lean Indiana fans for that game. I like Indiana. I know they just lost a tough one at Minnesota. I really liked what I saw in some of the games leading up, the Kansas State game, some of the other games I've watched with Indiana. Tucker DeVries, I think Darian DeVries is a good coach. Coaches great defense there. And DeVries is healthy now. Wilkerson's playing really well, scoring the ball. I think Indiana is going to be a top 25 team the rest of the way. If you made me guess, they're 22 right now, playing number 6 Louisville. I think they win the game tonight. So give me Louisville with or give me Indiana with the points though. Illinois, also another dog on the hardwood today, somewhere between +1.5, +2.5. I got them at +2.5. I like them at 1.5. I think they're going to win the game. Give me Illinois on a neutral site. It's in Nashville, so it's not really that neutral. But Illinois just got grown men and big Europeans. So give me Illinois. I like what I've seen from them far more than Tennessee early on in this year. And then my big play of the day, my upset of the day, Auburn at Arizona. Give me Auburn +9 against Arizona. I think Auburn is going to win the game. Give me +360 on the money line. I think Hall and Pettiford is one of the best 1-2 combos in the entire country. We'll see if Little Pearl can coach. Obviously got blown out by Michigan. I think Michigan's the best team in the country. I mean, this is still an Auburn team that handled Oregon, St. John's, NC State all handily. So give me the Auburn Tigers, War Dam Eagle +9, late night, 10 o'clock at Arizona. Let's talk about the National Football League, the NFL. My favorite play I have 4 plays at 1 o'clock. My favorite play of the 1 o'clock slate. Give me the Jacksonville Jaguars +2.5 against the Indianapolis Colts. Trevor Lawrence has started. I got a lot of stats for this one. A lot more stats than the other games, so bear down with me. I was about to say something inappropriate. I'm not going to do that. Trevor Lawrence has started 7 games as an underdog versus either the Colts or the Texans. His real threats in the division lately, and he's 5-2 against the spread in those games, covering by a touchdown per game. An issue under Shane Steichen for the Colts has been the bounce back off of divisional games. Indy 5-7 against the spread in those spots, 0-4 straight up and against the spread in their last 4 games in those spots. Daniel Jones has struggled historically against good defenses. I would say most quarterbacks do, but I'd say these numbers are even a little bit more pronounced. After last week, he's now 4-11-1 straight up playing outdoors against teams allowing under 20 points per game. At 22 points per game or less, that's 7-18-1, including 1-10-1 straight up in November or later. Banged up Daniel Jones, who already struggles in the cold, and a hurt Sauce Gardner. Give me the Jags. This stat mostly doesn't matter, but the Jags have always owned the Colts. They're always a thorn in the Colts' side. Since 2015, Indy is 3-16-1 against the spread against Jacksonville. In that span, none of the 9 Colts quarterbacks are above 500 against the spread against Jacksonville. In road and neutral site games in this span, the Colts are 1-9 against the spread against Jacksonville. 5 weeks to go from here on. The Colts have the hardest remaining strength of schedule with the Jags, the Seahawks, the Niners, the Jags again, and the Texans left on the schedule. And if you look at them, the Chargers, some of these AFC playoff teams in the hunt have brutal schedules to the point everybody's saying KC can't lose a game. I think KC can lose maybe 2 games. I think that's how crazy the AFC playoff race might get, especially if they beat either Houston or LA, and that's who they end up running with, because I think Indy's going to be a team that they're competing with in the wild card, and they already have the tiebreaker on them. So I'm starting to be a little bit more bullish on KC to still get to the playoffs. If they win Sunday night, they're absolutely getting in. But anyway, Jags plus 2.5. And I think the Jags might win that division. Browns minus 3.5 against the Tennessee Titans. I think there are levels to this, as Meek Mill once said. Browns minus 3.5. I think the Titans are a next level of bad. What Myles Garrett is doing alone, I think, separates them from the dreck of the league, like the Titans. I think they are dreck, the Browns, but it's a different level of dreck. Dog got into something. I'll let her fly. Dolphins minus 2.5 at the New York Jets for 1 unit. I know you're going to hear a lot of stats about Tua in the cold weather. I'm going to throw some positive stats at you about Tua. Who else in the business is throwing out positive stats about Tua? Now, you could take this if I lose and clown me for giving out positive stats about Tua. But hey, if I win, I'm the only guy out there doing it. Tua 6-0 straight up, 4-2 against the spread against the Jets, beating the Jets by 13 points per game in those matchups. In those 6 games, Tua has beaten 5 different Jets quarterbacks. So that would be a great trivia question. I'm going to pull that on Shane Half on Sunday. I guarantee Shane's not going to hear this. I'm going to pull that trivia question on Shane if Tua wins this game. He has beaten 5 different Jets quarterbacks: Justin Fields, Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Aaron Rodgers. I think he adds the illustrious Tyrod Taylor to that list. Dating back to 2003, Tua's 16-8-1 against the spread mark against the AFC East is the second best in-division mark for the AFC East behind, he might get this trivia one, Tom Brady. On the road, Tua is actually 7-2-1 against the spread against the AFC East. So you look at most of the home road metrics, Tua is so much better at home. It hasn't been as much of a problem in the division, though. So give me the Dolphins to get to 6-7 all of a sudden, minus 2.5. And then another terrible game. I can't believe I'm betting on 3 straight, just terrible, no good, very bad games. But the Washington Commanders money line at the Vikings. Vikings are spiraling fast. They've lost 4 in a row straight up against the spread, 1-6 straight up and against the spread in their last 7. Jaden Daniels is back, but I'll be honest, I liked the Commanders at +3 when Mariota was playing. So I liked the Commanders either way in this game. By the way, Jags 3-unit play, Browns 2-unit play, Dolphins and Commanders both 1-unit plays. My teaser is my second, or actually my biggest bet of Sunday is my teaser. Broncos at Raiders, Rams at Cardinals. Take those numbers from 7.5, move them to 1.5. I don't see the Broncos or the Rams losing to the Raiders or the Cardinals. Both those teams are in the graveyard. Give me the Broncos and the Rams. And then on Monday Night Football, Jalen Carter and Lane Johnson are out. I would be against my best judgment to make a big bet on the Eagles, but with the Chargers O-line the way it is, I'm going to take the Eagles ever so slightly. -2.5. I'll take 1 unit on it. Whatever. And then Jalen Hurts 5 units. You already know what it is. Let's do a quick just a quick rundown of the NFL games I did not touch on here. And we've got New Orleans at Tampa. Tampa an 8.5-point favorite. Just too many points for me to lay with the cardiac kids in Tampa. I would actually lean towards New Orleans in that one. Seattle at Atlanta. Seattle's 6.5-point favorite. I'm worried about Sam Darnold. He's looked pretty rough in some of these games recently, but I do actually think this number is a little too low. I think this number should be like more like 8.5, 9.5. I would lean Seattle. That's one that actually could end up on my card. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Baltimore 6-point favorite. I would lean Baltimore there. I've been pretty bullish that I think Baltimore's going to win that division. I actually think they might win it at like 8 and 9, but I think they're going to win that division. Cincy Buffalo. I wouldn't bet that with your money. I don't know what the Bengals are now that Burrow's back. We just don't have enough data. Houston KC is what I call an FAFO game. F around and find out, because there's no way I'm betting on this one. I think it's a terrible matchup for Kansas City. But if you look at all the metrics, Kansas City's been way better than they've suggested all year. So I don't want to bet against them in the game that finally flips. I think it could be this one. Whoever wins this game, clinch them into the playoffs, in my opinion, personally. So that's going to do it for Saturday morning spread here on December 6th. I'm your host, Mark Henry Jr. You can follow me on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Go check out everything that the Eagles Pinpool's got going on over on YouTube. Eagles Pinpool Country. Let's rock.